So I want to read a little bit of a piece here that I found in the Washington Examiner. This is right after the Republicans passed that giant spending bill that Trump signed. Opinion from Philip Klein in the Washington Examiner. Republicans repeal the Tea Party. It says, during the Obama era, Republicans campaigned on promises to restrain federal spending and repeal Obamacare. Having gained total control of Washington, they have chosen to repeal the Tea Party instead. Skip down a little bit to the end of the article. It says, when Republicans given power are consistently growing government and adding to the debt, it's time to stop saying they're abandoning limited government principles. The reality is they do not actually have any limited government principles. Their priorities are lower taxes and higher military spending, and they are willing to accede to growth and entitlements and other government programs if that's what it takes to secure the first two goals. This is short-sighted, of course, because their failure to grapple with reality inevitably means the nation will one day face both higher taxes and severe military cuts. If the Tea Party, for all the disruption it caused, couldn't change this dynamic, nothing ever will. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Special Monday night edition of Beyond Reason Radio right here. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We're on until 10 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. But if you missed any of the show, of course, you can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Make sure to follow me on Twitter as well, at Beyond Reason R. And, of course, we have Mr. Tom Benson once again producing tonight. How are you, Tom?
I'm doing fine. Monday night, huh? We're going to miss Monday Night Football, right? Oh, wait a minute.
No, this is, I ran into the shot doctor.
Uh-huh.
He's
on our sister station, WYGM.
96.9 The Game, the sports station over there. He goes to me, after the Super Bowl, he goes, this is actually a really kind of a sad day after the Super Bowl. And I thought he was talking about the Patriots losing because maybe he's a Patriots fan. I don't know. It was a happy day for me.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's a sad, there's really only two seasons in sports. He's like, there's only two seasons in sports. There's football season and there's waiting for football season. So, yeah, football season's over, and I guess we're in the season that is called waiting for football season.
Well, baseball is on the mind of a lot of people, and it's the pitchers and the catchers report later this week to spring training. So it's just around the corner. Of course, we got the Olympics going on now.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the Olympics later, I think.
Okay.
Because not really even about the sports. I have a hard time getting into all the Olympic sports. I'm much more into the summer games, I guess, if I'm into any. Mm-hmm. But just, I'm not the only one who's talked about this, but the fawning praise of North Korea.
Oh, please.
Their cheerleaders, Kim Jong-un's sister, and all this nonsense. And what the U.S. should do about North Korea, and what are they up to? That's what I want to know. I'm looking at her there with her smile on her face, and I'm like, what is she up to? What is North Korea? What are they up to? I don't know.
She's also in charge of propaganda for North Korea, so
of course
you can be sure they're using this for political gain at home.
Well, CNN helped them with that this week, so there you go.
They sure did.
There you go. So we'll talk about that as well. You can call 407-916-5400. You can also text to 23680. So the big story of today, there's really a lot of big stories today that we're going to get to, but the really big story of today is it's kind of two things in one. Trump put out his proposed budget blueprint for the next fiscal year. He put it out today. It's in a book. Looks all fancy. It's huge. It's got cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, which has to do with repealing Obamacare. That's a part of the plan. Mm-hmm. He has cuts to NPR and PBS, wants to phase them out and get rid of them.
That's right. Well, not get rid of them, but get rid of the subsidy from the federal government.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, basically they made the point, which is true, that most of their funding comes from other places anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be fine without the government anyway. And there's a bunch of other things that are good, but it would still increase the deficit a lot. It would increase the debt a lot. I think it's like $4 trillion over 10 years or something like that. Well, the budget is $4.4 trillion for next year. So if you have this nice, they always do this. They put out the proposed budget. They have a nice cover. They put out this big book of it, and they release it, and everyone talks about it. And you might as well just throw it in the trash. If you have a shredder, you're going to be there a while because it's gigantic. They always are. But if you have a shredder, you might as well just throw it in the shredder. Or you can use it for, fire kindling or something because it's really worthless. It's completely worthless. And especially this one. This one is even more worthless because they just passed a giant spending bill that funds the government for the next year.
2 years.
The next 2 years.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So, I mean, it's a nice thought. Yay, this is what he would like, but it's really too late. It doesn't matter. It's worthless. Nice effort, but we don't grade based on effort here at Beyond Reason Radio, so you can just throw it away and use it for whatever you want. So, I mean, there's some good things in it. But the big story of today, really, when it comes to government spending, is Trump's proposed infrastructure plan. Oh, this has been such a great favorite topic here on Beyond Reason Radio. This big push for infrastructure spending. And actually, Tom Benson, if you can get the audio ready, I have Trump audio up there. This was Trump today. He was having a meeting. He had a press conference about it, announcing his infrastructure plan. And this is what he said about that.
But this is a common sense and bipartisan plan that every member of Congress should support. I look forward to working with them, and we're going to get the American people roads that are fixed and bridges that are fixed. And if for any reason they don't want to support it, hey, that's going to be up to them. What was very important to me was the military. What was very important to me was the tax cuts. And what was very important to me was regulation. This is of great importance, but it's not nearly in that category because the states will have to do it themselves if we don't do it. But I would like to help the states out, and we're doing that with a very big investment.
How about the states just do it themselves anyway? How about that? Okay, here's the thing. Well, here's the general idea of the infrastructure plan. It's $200 billion in direct federal spending, federal government money into the infrastructure. They hope that will spur $1.5 trillion in total spending. It'll encourage investment and get the states involved and all that stuff. Here's the good parts and the bad parts of this plan. And I'm going to tell you why I don't like it. I've said a lot of this before, but I'm going to give you a big picture reason why I don't like it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the good parts of the plan are this. There are parts of the plan that make it easier for permitting, kind of streamline the permitting process, streamline some of the regulations. So if there is private investment, we can kind of speed this up because there's a lot of bureaucratic red tape that apparently gets in the way. And this is really all that should be done, in my opinion. Forget the spending, forget all that other stuff. Just streamline the process. Get the government out of the way, in a common sense way to streamline the process so we can get the states and stuff can get this done faster and cheaper and more efficiently. I think that's good. That's a good part of the plan. That's something that's been proposed by conservatives for a while. It's fine. The other part of the plan that I like is this. A lot of times we complain about, didn't we just do this? We did it under Obama. It was a $700 billion shovel-ready jobs plan. Remember the stimulus package and all that stuff.
Right.
Basically, that funding went all over the place to local governments, to the states, with all these strings attached, and the states could basically use it whatever they want. A lot of the states just used it to pay off union debt, pensions and all that stuff, to pay off the pensions and shore up other funding priorities. At least this one is focused. I'll give it that. This plan is focused specifically on infrastructure. So if the goal is to help America's infrastructure, this is very focused and it's very down the line, and at least it's not just all over the place, so it's not just a giant waste of money everywhere. That being said, I don't know why I have to keep reminding everybody of this, but we're $20 trillion in debt. We just passed a huge spending bill already that's going to increase the debt even more. They project deficits to be $1 trillion a year. We're back to Obama-era deficits. And we want to spend $200 billion. I know it seems like a drop in the bucket, but we want to spend another $200 billion on this? This is absurd. And the biggest reason why I don't like this is, even though it's kind of a drop in the bucket when you talk about $200 billion, it still sets the precedent. It sets the precedent that it's going to be the federal government's job to increase spending in this area. You already have the states and the local governments highly dependent on the federal government for grants, for infrastructure, and a whole bunch of other things. It's already there. That infrastructure is already in place. The federal government is already spending too much money on all this stuff. And all we're doing is expanding that precedent. Instead of a time where $20 trillion in debt, Republicans own every branch of government, well, except the judicial branch, but you know what I mean. They own both houses of Congress and the presidency. And this is a time where we should talk about cutting spending, getting rid of, women in government. That's what the Tea Party was about. Remember earlier I said we repealed the Tea Party? It sure seems like it. Instead, we're doing the opposite. And this, even if it's not a whole lot of money in the big scheme of things, when you're talking $200 billion, it sets that precedent. And this is going to be built into the future. So now you have $200 billion that all these people are going to be expecting. And then when that money runs out, I guarantee you, these people are going to come back in front of the mics. These politicians are going to come back in front of the TV cameras. They're going to come back in front of the mics, and they're going to say, we need another $200 billion because the infrastructure is crumbling. I'm afraid to drive home because I hear the infrastructure is crumbling, apparently. I can't drink water out of my faucet because apparently it's all crumbling around us, is what they say. This is the opposite approach that we should be taking right now. In fact, I just looked this up. The CBO came out with a report last year. You would think that we don't spend any money on infrastructure.
You would think, sure.
You would think it's all just crumbling and it's all just sitting there rotting.
Yeah.
Outside. You look outside and it's all just rotting. Nothing's being done. According to the Congressional Budget Office, in 2014, the federal, state, and local government spent $416 billion. That's in 2014. That was 4 years ago. Who knows what they've been spending on it the last 4 years, but that's the most recent they have on the report. $416 billion in 2014. $100 billion of that was from the federal government. $316 billion of that were from the local and state governments. I don't know about you, but I think, especially when we're $20 trillion in debt, that $416 billion is a lot of money. I think that's plenty. And yet we want to increase more. This is nothing more than political showmanship. It's an easy win for politicians.
And one thing you're not hearing any talk about, and it's coming, big-time hike in the federal gasoline tax.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's coming too. Because it's never going to be enough. That's what drives me crazy. This is what I mean about when we're setting these precedents for the future. Even if $200 billion doesn't seem like a lot, we're just continuing the precedent of expanding the federal government. And it will never be enough. So what they're going to do, they're going to have to increase taxes.
I've heard an increase of 50 cents per gallon.
Yeah.
Federal tax.
Yeah. Could be more than that. Who knows? They also want to add toll roads everywhere. That'll be great to pay for it. So am I the only one out there that's like sounding the alarm on this, that this is just completely unnecessary? I was stunned, Tom Benson, when I looked up that CBO report and found that we spent $416 billion in 2014. Basically, that's what we're spending a year. What? Wait a minute. I thought everything was just crumbling. Where's all this money going?
It's a budget that apparently has something for everyone, and what was most important for the president was increase in military spending.
Yes. Well, yeah, when you're talking about the whole budget, that's right. And
take a little and give a little.
Yeah, so I actually want to get more into that in the next segment, because I want to go over some numbers about where this government spending is going and maybe what the solution is, some different solutions to this problem, if there is a solution. There are actually a bunch of solutions. It's just nobody really wants to solve the problem, it seems like. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We're on Facebook Live as well, so you can like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page and check us out there as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
407-916-5400. You can also text to 23680, where standard message and data rates apply. This is Beyond Reason Radio. Of course, we're on until 10 p.m. tonight, right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and I'm joined by Tom Benson, producing as well. We've been talking about, I hadn't been on since they passed the spending bill, so I didn't get to give...
Yeah, last Tuesday we were on, yeah.
Yeah, Tuesday on. So I didn't get to give my full take on that. Mm-hmm. And we talked about in the first segment, and you can call on that this massive infrastructure spending that Trump wants to do. And what's stunning to me about that is, you know what the Democrats' problem with it? The Democrats have been complaining about it all day, all week, ever since Trump's been in office. You know what their big problem with it is? It's not enough. $200 billion? No, that doesn't do anything. That's nothing. We need more money. Oh, just dear God. It's just never going to end. But, you had made the point, and this is exactly right, that Trump was willing to give in to more spending because he wanted increased military spending and border security. So once you get that, he wasn't willing to keep the spending caps. The spending caps was the one legacy of the Tea Party. Mm-hmm. The sequester cuts, at least that actually worked in cutting the deficits. And, well, that's gone. That's gone now. The Republican Party has repealed the Tea Party, as Philip Klein in the Washington Examiner put in his article.
Part of the problem with the deficit is Joe Sixpack, who's trying to put, food on the table and keep gasoline in the car, can't grasp that amount of money.
Well, and that's actually a really good point. But they're going to eventually. Why are they going to eventually? Because the government's going to have to pay it back. I mean, look at this. Daniel Horowitz in the Conservative Review, he had a really great piece breaking down all the problems with the spending bill, mm-hmm. All kinds of problems. I mean, one thing he talked about is how a lot of these so-called offsets in the spending bill to make it even seem like it's less than it really is are not really there. They don't really exist. They're not really going to happen. It's kind of budgeting gimmicks. But I mean, just check out these numbers here. He says, given the spending offsets will never materialize, this bill will add well over $100 billion in net interest payments over the next 10 years to service the higher debt. Remember, interest rates are going to go up now because the economy is doing better. Mm-hmm. The Committee for Responsible Federal Budget estimates if temporary provisions in the bill were made permanent, the ultimate cost could increase to $1.7 trillion or $2.1 trillion, including interest, and increased debt to 105% of gross domestic product by 2027. It's important to remember that this is just the public share of the debt. Then he points this out, and this is what you talk about. You want to talk about what Joe Sixpack can grasp. Here's the kicker. He says, in just 9 years, the interest on the debt will rise from about $300 billion to over $800 billion because of rising interest rates. That is more than our current cost of Medicare, just paying off the interest of the debt. When we have to increase taxes or cut military spending or cut programs, which if we don't do it now, we're going to have to do it eventually, that's something that Joe Sixpack's going to know. When you have these government austerity measures and you have all of this really affecting and weighing down the economy, that's something that Joe Sixpack is going to be able to grasp. Once they see that the interest on the debt we're paying is more than Medicare, is one of the biggest line items in the budget in just 10 years, and that starts weighing down the economy, people are going to realize that. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be a big problem. So what's the solution to all this? I mean, the real solution is to cut spending. But how do we force Congress to do that? I don't know if there's any way to really do it. People have been talking about a convention of the states. So eventually we could propose a constitutional amendment to maybe balance the budget. You're skeptical of it. You don't think that's ever going to happen. There's been some process of that, but
I can't see it coming to a conclusion at a constitutional convention, because you're going to get the same bickering there as that you currently have bickering in the House and the Senate.
No, that's an interesting point. But what do we do here? Do we do a balanced budget amendment? If theoretically we could do this, what's the solution? Is a balanced budget amendment? I was actually reading a piece from Walter Williams on the Daily Signal.
Smart man.
Really smart guy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying that a balanced budget amendment wouldn't really solve the problem, because technically the balanced, technically as long as they can fund the government, the balance is budget. There'd be ways around that. His solution is to have a constitutional amendment that limits congressional spending to a fixed fraction of GDP. That way, if the GDP was set for that year, you would say the government cannot spend more than this percentage of the gross domestic product, say like 20% or something. He said the only stipulation would be if the president declared a state of emergency and 2/3 of both houses of Congress voted to approve the spending. So it would be a high bar, but if we were in an emergency, like, we were invaded or something,
sure,
then they would be able to spend more if they really had to. I think this is one solution that I really like. There have been other people that have been talking about this as well, but what you do is you pass an amendment that caps it to gross domestic product. Will this ever happen? I just don't know what it's going to take. I really don't know what it's going to take to get our country serious about this problem. And I think it's going to get to a point where it's going to get so big you can't ignore it, and it's just all going to kind of collapse on itself. Because you're right, Tom Benson, the biggest issue is the regular average American doesn't feel it yet. It's just kind of a number that's out there to them, but they don't feel it. Mm-hmm. But eventually they are going to feel it. It's happening in countries in Europe with austerity measures. The people there are feeling it, and it's causing crises there. Eventually that's going to come here if we don't address this. And it doesn't seem like we're addressing it.
It's the old story of kick the can down the road.
Yeah, eventually you're going to run out of road, I think.
You'll find a dead end, huh?
I guess. A cul-de-sac. He did end his article here. He said, Walter Williams, I thought this was a great point. Something I've said before. So during an interview about the proposed amendment, a reporter asked why I disagreed with the committee and called for a limit of 10% of GDP on federal spending. He said, I told him that if 10% is good enough for the Baptist Church, it ought to be good enough for Congress. I agree with that completely.
Makes sense.
Cap it to 10% of GDP. And I've been saying this for a while. The tax, if we're going to do an income tax, and I'm starting to prefer a consumption tax, like a sales tax more. But if we're going to do an income tax, I think everyone should just pay 10% and call it a day. I think that's plenty. And it's just the same thing. If it's good enough for the church, it's good enough for our government, I think. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. Going to talk a little bit North Korea. Everybody was obsessed with North Korea over the weekend, apparently. So we'll talk about that and much more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you heart Beyond Reason Radio, listen to the Beyond Reason Radio podcast on iHeartRadio. Just download the iHeartRadio app and search Beyond Reason Radio. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio, Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
So what is North Korea up to? What are those tricky North Koreans up to with this Winter Olympics stuff? I just don't know. I mean, I kind of do. They're really just they're just playing a propaganda game. That's all it is.
Sure.
It's a propaganda game. I mean, Kim Jong-un's sister, what's her name? Kim Yo-jong. She's the head of propaganda of the country.
You mean the younger sister of the fat man?
Yes.
Now I know who you mean.
With the weird haircut?
Yeah.
Yeah. So welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Here we're on until 10 p.m. tonight. If you want to call and comment, you can call 407-916-5400 or you can text to 23680. So the thing that really got me was they called Kim Yo... What? I keep getting her name wrong. Kim Yo-jong. She's North Korea's Ivanka Trump.
Oh, please.
Did you hear people saying that?
Yeah. That was all over my living room.
What?
Yeah.
I saw. I was like, for God's sake, really? What? Because they're both women. That's it, and they're related to the. Well, I mean, yeah, one's a dictator and one's the president, so it's not even really that. I don't. The whole thing, and then NBC Olympics, they tweeted out on their Twitter page. This is so satisfying to watch, talking about the North Korean cheerleaders.
Well, I can understand NBC doing something like that. They got to protect their investment. They got billions of dollars at stake here.
Well, as long as we know that they're all slaves.
Well, as long as we know
the cheerleaders are like slaves, right?
Right. and they are. If they get out of line, everybody knows where their parents, their family lives back home in the North.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they do because they know they have to threaten them like that because they know that once the North Koreans go to a country like South Korea, see how freaking awesome it is compared to their country, they're going to, if they have any questions of leaving, they know that their family will be either thrown into a camp or killed. So, I mean, it's just crazy stuff. But what really got me, though, is remember when Trump was really talking tough with North Korea?
Mm-hmm.
We'll rain fire and fury. We'll rain down fire and fury. Oh, my gosh, Trump's going to start nuclear war. He's a warmonger. He wants to go to war with North Korea. What's amazing to me is that the exact opposite has happened. Anyone else realize that? Even if you don't want to give Trump credit for what's going on there right now with talks between South Korea and North Korea, which we're not sure where they're going because North Korea, they're not really, giving in to anything. It seems like South Korea is giving in to all of North Korea's demands. So we don't really know exactly where that's going. But the fact is, they're talking. North Korea is part of the Olympics. There's been an easing of tensions lately. It's been the exact opposite of what people thought would happen with Trump's so-called horrible rhetoric. And I just find that fascinating. They will never give Trump credit for it, but I never had a problem with Trump talking tough against our enemies. Now, they still need to have tougher sanctions, and Mike Pence has been over there and he's been promising tougher sanctions.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see that some people in the media were talking about Kim Yo-jong upstaged Mike Pence, outflanked Mike Pence?
CNN article.
Like what?
A CNN article on the website.
Yeah, I think I saw this.
Was Kim Yo-jong is a signal that North Korea is not this crazy, weird, former Cold War state, but it too has young women that are capable of being the future leadership.
Was whoever wrote that article bowing?
Well,
as they wrote, I mean, what in the world?
The thing is, I hear via the grapevine that a lot of the reporters and anchors and pundits who are on CNN TV are upset over these articles that appear on the website, which apparently is a different division that works the website.
Oh man, I just saw. I think we saw it before the show on Fox News. We just saw a tweet by a reporter over there who was saying that South Koreans are not falling for this propaganda move by North Korea.
Right.
They don't like North Korea. They don't like what North Korea is doing.
And they're not obsessed with the cheerleaders from North Korea. Like the big article in USA Today, insinuated.
Yeah, I mean, South Korea, they know what goes on in North Korea better than we do. They're not falling for this game. They know this is just a propaganda coup by the North Koreans. So, I mean, they're not falling for it. It's probably best that we don't fall for it as well. But one thing that we've talked about on the show before is what do we do with North Korea? What is the solution to North Korea? One thing that I promoted a lot is we need to up our game in missile defense. We need to up our game there. And the fact is, ever since the Soviet Union fell, we have just not been as serious about it until George W. Bush and after 9/11 kind of upped it again, but we're way behind what we thought we would be at this point. I found an article here from the New York Times, the editorial board, that I just found odd, I guess. It's not that they make bad points here. It's just that where they go with it is weird. The headline was "The Dangerous Illusion of Missile Defense." They said after more than 30 years of research and more than $200 billion, the nation's ballistic missile defense program remains riddled with flaws even as the threat from North Korean missiles escalates. Still, President Trump persuaded Congress to increase spending for the program to $14 billion from $10 billion in the 2018 budget, claiming in his national security strategy that plans to push the system will include the ability to defeat missiles threats to prior to launch. So if it's having problems, wouldn't the increased funding in it help it? So it's not where it should be, and the New York Times says we should just scrap it? I just don't know. They say that Trump's overselling the program and that it's not nearly as effective as they want you to believe. Because we haven't taken it seriously until recently. I mean, we haven't. It was really something promoted by Reagan. It was a big push, and then after the Soviet Union fell, the care about it just kind of went away.
Well, here's how you handle articles like this, especially in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN. If they're against it, I'm for it.
There you go. Yeah, that's the the producer Tom Benson approach to the editorial board of the New York Times. If they're against it, he's for it.
That I can grasp.
Well, I mean, here's one thing they say here. They say, but like the Reagan-era Star Wars initiative, it will never provide a foolproof, comprehensive shield against a nuclear adversary. There are real questions about whether the program is sustainable, especially if its managers cannot produce better results. A new Pentagon study of the program is expected shortly.
Hey, you got to try. If you don't try, you might as well just give up.
Well, that's true, and I agree with that completely, but there's something else that Trump's been doing. He's been talking about modernizing our nuclear infrastructure in this country and maybe upping our nuclear arsenal if we have to, because we have adversaries like North Korea, Russia, and China. And you know who hates that? The New York Times doesn't like that either.
Well, see, there you go.
The left doesn't like that either. So he wants to up missile defense. Oh, well, that's not going to be good enough. That's not going to do it. Okay, well, how about we increase our nuclear arsenal as well to, mutually assure destruction and make sure that they don't mess with us? Oh, well, no, we can't do that either. Well, what do you want? What do you want him to do? Just give in? Just let North Korea do what they want. They said this here. They said missile defense needs to be a part of the United States strategy, but it alone will not save the country from a North Korean nuclear attack. I don't think Trump has ever said it alone will. I've never heard Trump say that. He wants to up it to help our defenses, but he has a lot of other strategies when it comes to them as well.
So what does the Times propose? What else is needed?
Well, they said, let's see. He says he would make a serious error if the faith of missile defense led him to take military action against North Korea on the ground. Yada, yada, yada. The president would be better off making sure that major powers keep enforcing tough sanctions on North Korea. The South Korea and Japan are prepared for any military action that North Korea's, Trump's already doing all this, that North Korea's avenues for exporting nuclear technology are blocked, and that America is ready to test any opening to engage North Korea in negotiations. Trump's already done all that. He's already been doing all that.
Yeah.
And more, really. The problem with trying to have tough sanctions on North Korea is there's a giant black market through China.
That's right.
Funneling a lot of money in there. And now you have South Korea. I just learned this from the Wall Street Journal today. Because of the Olympic Games, South Korea got suspended some of their sanctions against them to get them in the Olympic Games. Maybe that tells you why they're there.
That's right.
It's a way to get them. Yeah, get them money.
I saw that article too.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. It seemed like this article in the New York Times was trying to be very critical of Trump, but he's already doing everything they want. But I think missile defense is a good. I think that's a good start. I don't see anything wrong with that. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. Conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
So there was a lot of controversy over the weekend, once again, over Memogate. Yes, Memogate is still around. There was a controversy over the weekend because President Trump would not release the Democrats' 10-page memo. Now, Trump thinks there's a little bit of a rat here in what the Democrats, he smells a little bit of a rat here in what the Democrats were trying to do. He says they laid a trap in the 10-page memo, deliberately adding classified material that they knew would have to be heavily redacted, whereupon they would blame the White House for lack of transparency. Unfortunately, this has all worked in the Democrats. Might be right, but this has all worked in the Democrats' favor because it just makes it seem like Trump is trying to hide something.
In other words, Trump is damned if he does and damned if he doesn't.
Yeah, it's a really smart play by the Democrats, actually. Part of this is the Republicans' fault because they would not release the Democrat memo earlier, but that's party politics for you. That's just the name of the game. But there was an interesting editorial, well, it was an opinion piece, an editorial piece in the Wall Street Journal, and they are saying what I've been saying. Because if you really want to forget the memos, okay, forget the Nunes memo, forget the Democrat memo, forget all this stuff. If you really want to find out what's going on, there's one way to do it, and that's release the FISA documents. That means we need release all of it, a full record of the FBI wiretap request into Carter Page that apparently started a lot of this. Because the reason why the memo was so controversial from the Republicans is it concludes that the dossier, which was completely unverified at the time, still mostly unverified, some of it has been proven to be true, some of it has been proven to not be true. Mm-hmm. Most of it's completely unverified and scandalous. At the time, especially, it was completely unverified and scandalous. If that was the main reason, that was the main thing that got that FISA warrant, then there's a big problem. So how do we find out if the truth? The Democrats say, no, that wasn't the only thing. There was all this other stuff. Okay, well, there's only really one way to find out about this. The one way to find out about this is to release the FISA, declassify the FISA court request. And then we can look at it and we can see it will all be right there. Now, Republican senators, Lindsey Graham and others, have released their own memo. They want to go after Michael Steele because they think Michael Steele lied to the FBI and that he was a part of all this mess. And we already know that Michael Steele was completely biased against Trump. He said one of the reasons he was doing this, he was leaking a lot of this information to the press even before, other than the FBI, he was leaking it to the press. And they're saying the main reason he did that, and he said he didn't want Trump to be elected. So he was definitely biased against Trump. But we know that the main way we can solve a lot of this problem is just release the memo. Or release the FISA transcripts. Figure out the initial FISA court request. If you release it, we'll find out exactly what the FBI had and what they used to get the FISA court request.
Now,
I agree with the Wall Street Journal.
Is that something the DOJ would do, or that is something Trump would have to do?
Trump could do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of been the big thing. Why hasn't Trump done this? If he really wants to put the truth out there, if he really says this is all a scam against him, if the Republicans are saying all this, there's one way to prove it: declassify the FISA request. If you declassify the FISA request, we'll see, and it'll give either one side or the other ammunition. Another thing that I found interesting is, did you know that there's an FBI informant on the other side that apparently has proof that the Russians were paying the Clinton Global Initiative to get leverage so that they would approve the Uranium One thing? There's an FBI informant that did that on the other side.
It's a wonder you bring up the Uranium One situation. The CEO, from what I understand, of the company that got the uranium in Russia was on that plane crash that killed 71 people over the weekend.
Was he really?
Yep.
Oh, my gosh. How did I miss that?
Conspiracy.
Oh, man. We're not that kind of show, but wow, I did not know that. That's stunning. But I just thought it was interesting that you have one side. Yeah, the Republicans who say Michael Steele is, biased, unverified. It's just a witch hunt against Trump. And then you have another side where there's another FBI informant. Then the Democrats say that guy's biased, and that's just a witch hunt against Hillary. And this is where politics is today. All right, in the next hour, I have a great piece I want to get to you about how times are actually pretty good in the world, believe it or not. Give a little perspective on where we are in the world today and why we are where we are. One more hour Beyond Reason Radio is up next. People are in their car right now. People are listening in their headphones right now. Maybe at the gym, who knows? And they're like, wait a minute. Is Ed Yaffee here? On a Monday night?
Wow.
On WFLA? For a special edition of Beyond Reason Radio?
Life is good.
Yes, life is good. Exactly right. This is Beyond Reason Radio on a unusual special Monday night edition we're on until 10 p.m. tonight. We already did 1 hour. If you missed that hour, the podcast will be available, of course, on iHeartRadio, so you want to check that out. But we're on until 10 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and believe it or not, we still have a lot more we have to talk about. And believe it or not, I'll be on tomorrow night at the same time.
Wow.
2 nights in a row. I know, it's crazy. All your dreams are coming true. If you're listening to this. And by the way, you'll want to stay with me the full hour, because guess what? I will end the show with everybody's favorite segment, Things That Made Yaffee Laffy. Yes, that's right. So you definitely want to check that out. So Tom Benson, I think I'm going to do something a little bit different to start this hour.
Okay.
I think we need some good news.
I
think we need some perspective and some good news and some good thoughts. Because, the show is called Beyond Reason, so we go over a lot of stuff that is well beyond reason. And there's plenty of beyond reason stuff to go over. Because you need a voice of reason through it all, and that's what I do. But I found this piece from Steven Pinker in the Wall Street Journal. And it's a long piece. I can't read the whole thing, obviously. But I thought it was fascinating. And it's entitled, "The Enlightenment is Working." It says, "Don't listen to the gloomsayers. The world has improved by every measure of human flourishing over the past 2 centuries, and the progress continues." There's a lot of bad news lately. You think the world's kind of descending into chaos.
Well, didn't I hear where the doomsday clock is ticking towards midnight?
I forgot about the stupid doomsday.
Yeah.
Never really understood the doomsday clock. Like, who controls that thing? Anyway, it's fascinating.
I think his name is Bernie Sanders. something that no.
They gave him control of it now.
Yes.
Well, I mean, he would be, taking us closer. But look at some of these stats that he throws out in this article about how much the world, and not just the world here in the U.S., how much things have improved even just the last 20 years, 10 years. It says, consider the U.S. just 3 decades ago. Our annual homicide rate was 8.5 per 100,000. 11% of us fell below the poverty line, and we spewed 20 million tons of sulfur dioxide and 34.5 million tons of particulate matter into the atmosphere. Fast forward to the most recent numbers available today. The homicide rate is 5.3 per 100,000. That's actually up from just a few years ago. 4.4 was what it was in 2014. But even at 5.3, that's lower than it was just 3 decades ago. 3% of us fall below the consumption poverty line. And we emit 4 million tons of sulfur dioxide and 20.6 million tons are particulates. Remember that 4 million is lowered from the 20 million just 3 decades ago.
I'll say.
Despite generating more wealth and driving more miles. So this is all happening. We're driving more. We're generating more wealth. We have more industrialization here in the country in the past 3 decades. And yet we're putting out less pollution and we have less murder. And less people are in poverty. It's amazing when you think about that. Now, that's in the U.S. He says globally, you can look at the stats and it's the same way. The 30-year scorecard also favors the president. In 1988, 23 wars raged, killing people at a rate of 3.4 per 100,000. Today, it's 12 wars, killing 1.2 per 100,000. So we still see wars in the news and everything in certain areas, but really it's a lot less in the whole world than it was 3 decades ago.
Yeah.
The number of nuclear weapons has fallen from 60,780 to 10,325. In 1988, the world had just 45 democracies embracing 2 million people. Today it has 103 embracing 4.1 billion.
Wow.
So that's double the amount of people that are in democracies now. That year saw 46 oil spills 3 decades ago. 2016, just 5. We're all afraid to drill for more oil because of all of the oil spills that are going to happen. We're destroying the planet. There was 46 3 decades ago, and there are just 5 last year, 2 years ago. 37% of the population lived in extreme poverty, barely able to feed themselves. You know what that rate is today? 9.6%.
Down from what again?
37%.
Wow. That's
in 3 decades.
Big drop.
2016, yes, was a bad year for terrorism in Western Europe with 238 deaths. But 1988 was even worse with 440. So even terrorism deaths are less than it was in 1988. The headway made around the turn of the millennium is not a fluke, he says. It's a continuation of a process set in motion by the Enlightenment in the late 18th century that has brought improvements in every measure of human flourishing. He says, when the Enlightenment began, a third of the children born in the richest parts of the world died before their 5th birthday. Today, that fate falls 6% of the children in the poorest parts of the world. So in rich parts of the world, a third of the children died, when they were children, before their 5th birthday. Now only 6% of the children in the poorest parts of the world see that fate. In those countries, infectious diseases are in steady decline, and many will soon follow smallpox into extinction. He also continues, he says, the poor may not always be with us. The world is about 100 times wealthier today than it was 2 centuries ago. And the prosperity is becoming more evenly distributed across countries and people. Within the lifetimes of most readers, the rate of extreme poverty could approach 0. Catastrophic famine, never far away in the past, has vanished from all but the most remote and war-ravaged regions and undernourishment is in steady decline. This is all because, by the way, of freedom, democracy, republicanism, free markets. Within developed countries, inequality is rising, but real poverty is not. That means the rich are getting richer, but nobody's getting poorer. It says a century ago, the richest countries devoted 1% of their wealth to children, the poor, the sick, and the aged. Today, they spend almost a quarter of it to those things. Most of their poor today are fed, clothed, and sheltered and have luxuries like smartphones and air conditioning that used to be unavailable to anyone, rich or poor. Poverty among racial minorities has fallen, and poverty among the elderly has plunged. We keep hearing how it's just a crisis of all these things. It's not. One of the poorest countries in Africa, or a very poor country in Africa, is Burkina Faso. I don't know if you ever heard of Burkina Faso in Africa. Mm-hmm. I knew some missionaries that lived there for a long time. One of their fastest growing industries in the past decade has been the cell phone industry. Mm. They put up a bunch of cell towers, and people are poor there, but they all have cell phones. Mm. It's amazing. What they do is they buy phone cards. But, yeah, I mean, stunning to think about.
Yeah.
So, and this goes on and on and on about how things have gone. I just wanted to give you some perspective, but it's also important to know why. You know, there's a lot of criticism of Western civilization now. And Western civilization in our past has not been perfect. European civilization, Western civilization, they had slavery. They unfortunately killed a lot of natives in South America and North America, Native Americans, mostly through disease that they didn't realize they were bringing over. But they brought a lot of good as well in Western civilization. The ideas behind Western civilization, especially Americanism, you know, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, natural law, human rights, those kind of ideas have brought forward all these things that I'm talking about right now. A good book to read, by the way, on that is called Civilization, the West and the Rest by Niall Ferguson. Really good book. He talks about why Western civilization was the best and why it has been good for the world. Of course, he also has another book called The Great Degeneration. You know, how societies die over time. And so that one's kind of concerning, how we're kind of getting rid of a lot of those things that made us so great.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But, I mean, for the most part, it's very interesting. We want to attack our Western civilization now. It was bad, did all these evil things, but Western civilization has done a lot more good than bad. Look at this stat. Life has been getting safer in every way. Over the past century, Americans have become 96% less likely to be killed in an auto accident, 88% less likely to be mowed down on the sidewalk, 99% less likely to die in a plane crash, 59% less likely to fall to their deaths, 92% less likely to die by fire, 90% less likely to drown, 92% less likely to be asphyxiated, and 95% less likely to be killed on the job. Life in other rich countries is even safer, and life in poorer countries will get safer as they get richer. It says, despite backsliding in countries like Russia, Turkey, and Venezuela, the long-term trend in governance is toward democracy and human rights. 2 centuries ago, a handful of countries embracing 1% of the world's people were democratic. Today, more than half of the world's countries embracing 55% of its people are democratic. Not long ago, half the world's countries had laws that discriminated against racial minorities. Today, more countries have policies that favor their minorities than policies that discriminate against them. At the turn of the 20th century, women could vote in just one country. Today, they can vote in every country where men can vote, save one. That's Vatican City. Laws that criminalize homosexuality continue to be stricken down, and attitudes towards minority, women, and gay people are becoming steadily more tolerant, particularly among the young, a portent of the world's future. Violence against women, children, and minorities is in the long-term decline, as in the exploitation of children for their labor. Get into all these stats, and it's just amazing. Some good news to start for you. And there's a lot more in this piece. It was in the Wall Street Journal. I posted it on my Facebook page. If you send me a friend request on Facebook, search Michael Yaffee, send me a friend request. Go down to my profile. I think I posted it Saturday or Sunday. You can check it out there as well.
What's the name of the article again?
It's called The Enlightenment is Working.
Okay.
Really good stuff. It says, he says this. He says, is progress inevitable? Of course not. Solutions create new problems which must be solved in their turn. We can always be blindsided by nasty surprises such as 2 world wars and the 1960s crime boom and the AIDS and opioid epidemics. But, and this is not necessarily, this guy's not really necessarily positive of Trump or anything like that. But I just thought it was, really interesting going through a lot of the stats. He says, secular liberal democracy, they're the happiest and healthiest places on earth and the favorite destinations of people who vote with their feet. And once you appreciate the Enlightenment project of applying knowledge and sympathy to enhance human flourishing can succeed, it's hard to imagine anything more heroic and glorious. Really, really interesting stuff there. And in the next segment, I'm going to play some audio that kind of goes on this same theme. It's by Steven Crowder. He's a conservative commentator. He's also kind of a comedian out there. He has a show on Conservative Review TV, has podcasts out there, very popular. He had a show he was doing where they were asking him questions. And he talks about the power of ideas, because there seems to be a trend now that we want to treat all ideas as equal. And you can't treat all ideas as equal. Some ideas are better than others. Some cultures are better than others. That's what got us to where we are today. And it's an important point, but today we're so in political correct mode that we don't want to admit that that's a possibility. And that can be dangerous thinking, because we have to believe in the power of good ideas and the power that some ideas are better than other ideas. And of course, we should judge based only on ideas. So he kind of went on a little bit of a rant in one of his shows, and I have the audio, and we're going to play that next. It'll be my voice of reason of the day, Steven Crowder. You'll want to stay with me. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is a special Monday night edition of Beyond Reason Radio. The hours were open, so I said, yes, I will take them, and, well, here I am. And everyone, I know you're all very thrilled, and if you're not, shame on you. I appreciate you joining the show. We're on until 10 p.m. tonight, right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Tom Benson is with me as well. In the first segment, I was reading from this piece called The Enlightenment is Working, and it was talking about how pretty much almost by every measure, because of the progress, started with the Enlightenment, started with ideas, mostly from Western civilization, the world has gotten a much better place. It is just a much better place than it used to be just 3 decades ago. In my lifetime, it's gotten a lot better. Now, in some ways, it's gotten worse. There's no doubt about that. Government has grown way too much. We're in way too much debt. And some of the culture is starting to decay a little bit on the edges. Unfortunately, that's kind of what happens. You kind of build and build and build, but I do still fear we're kind of headed towards a cliff, that we're going to hit a peak, and then instead of it gradually declining, it might just totally fall over the edge. That's kind of a whole nother subject, but the main reason why the world has gotten better is because of free market capitalism, because of republicanism, because of the idea of individual rights and a system built on natural rights and natural law. And those are all ideas that came, a lot of them, from Western civilization. Not completely from Western civilization, but a lot of them, especially Americanism. But there seems to be a trend sometimes that we don't want to say one culture or one idea is better than the other, because we might offend the people who don't have the ideas that are as good. And that's a problem. And I found this video. It's from Steven Crowder. He was at an event at Virginia Tech. He was asked by a student about this trend, about, well, Why are we, sometimes we're afraid to say one idea or one culture is better than the other because we're afraid of offending. And I thought his answer to this was really good. So I wanted to play my voice of reason of the day, Steven Crowder. He works for Conservative Review TV. He also has a podcast, Louder with Crowder, very famous conservative comedian and commentator. Here is his answer to that question.
I do not understand why there is anything wrong. And by the way, no one here can explain it either. There is anything wrong with acknowledging the superiority of ideas. That's it. That's it. You want to know? And if you're focusing on ideas and not identity politics, if you're focusing on the superiority of ideas, that's how you stop the Nazis. Sorry, Sven. Not how you start the Nazis. Identity politics starts the Nazis. The war of ideas saying, you know what, we believe that constitutional freedoms, we believe that basic human rights, we believe that everybody is entitled to the same human rights. That stops bad ideas.
So I thought that was really good. And he talked about, you know, why the battle of ideas is much more important than identity politics.
And then, of course, you have historical ideas where you see ideas are inferior. Now, if you're a racist, and this is what happens, what racists do, is they find a place, they find some nation in Africa that's horrible and backwards and tribal and war-torn, and they say, look at what's happened with it's because they're black. That's what a racist does. And they say, look at America, it's because they're mostly white. Right? When the fact is that's not what we're talking about. And I know some people here are going to be upset. Some people might, well, hold on. No, it's not a race thing. It is entirely about a set of ideas. It's entirely, I keep going back to truth, about the United States Constitution, a constitutional republic, and unalienable rights as endowed to us by our Creator. Here's one thing, I come from Canada as a good example. Canada doesn't have the right to free speech. Okay, and everyone, if you want to say there are no ideas that are superior, all cultures are created equal, you don't believe that because you believe in murder laws. And this is one thing where people, they go, well, it's relative. You know, you hear this a lot when people argue against spirituality, when they argue against any kind of faith. They say, well, you know what? If I need a God to tell me not to kill, or if I need a God to tell me not to steal, I'm a pretty horrible person. Those truths are universal. They're not. They're not at all. You have places where it's perfectly fine to steal. You have places where violent acts that would be considered felonies here in the United States are perfectly acceptable there. Mercy was not actually considered a virtue in society until modern Christendom. It was considered a weakness. Now, you want to sit there and tell me that every single person in this room, or an Antifa, or the LGBTQ AAIP Center, or college socialist Democrats don't believe that not all cultures, that not all ideas are created equal? It is absolutely, it is bullshit. Of the highest order. They don't believe it. You don't have to act like you believe it. And I really hope that everyone stops pretending as though it's some kind of a legitimate argument. Ideas are not equal. That's why ideas win out. That's why societies evolve. And guess what? There have been different societies throughout history that include all kinds of different races of people and ideas. We're just talking about that. You can go back to the Greeks, the Romans, the Turks, not the Young Turks, the actual Turkish Empire. You can go... Look at Prussia. You can look now at the United States. I think the United States has a better set of ideas. And the reason that I would argue it has a better set of ideas is because there is no country that has single-handedly pulled more people out of poverty in the history of the world ever. Male, female, white, black, brown, yellow, you name it. Statistically, your best chance of making it and being successful and reaching your dreams is not being in Canada, not being in Germany, but the United States of America. And it's not a race thing, it's an idea thing. Let's stop lying to ourselves.
You know, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that is exactly right. And I think too much, this is what really frustrates me about a lot of identity politics. Because I'm not someone who gets wrapped up in that. I don't care what your identity is, what your race is. I want to know what your character is, what your judgment is, and what your ideas are, because it's ideas that are important to me. But too much in politics, we get caught up in identity. And bloodlines, race, gender. It's ridiculous. And it's kind of annoying. And it doesn't help us progress into the future. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. So an issue where identity politics often plays too much of a role is immigration. Well, the Republicans have revealed their immigration framework. It's basically a version of what the White House, what President Trump has wanted. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to give my take on immigration and the Dreamers and this whole DACA situation as a whole. I have a little bit of a cynical take on all this that maybe you haven't heard anywhere else. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeart Radio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
So there's a few GOP senators that have introduced a version of immigration reform that basically mimics what President Trump has proposed himself, what the White House has proposed. The bill is from Republican Senators Chuck Grassley, John Cornyn, James Lankford, Tom Tillis, David Perdue, Tom Cotton, and Joni Ernst that largely resembles what Trump has proposed. What Trump has proposed is a path to citizenship for 1.8 million eligible immigrants, more than 800,000 of whom register for DACA in the 5 years of the program. In exchange, the White House sought upwards of $25 billion for border security and a wall, a number of changes to laws to make it easier to deport and detain immigrants, and a substantial cut to illegal immigration based on family relationships and an end to the diversity visa lottery. Basically, the GOP bill mimics a lot of those proposals. Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio. The topic I want to get into right now is, of course, immigration, because this has been a big issue, especially with DACA. And, of course, it caused a government shutdown before. And basically, the Democrats are blaming the Republicans. The Republicans are blaming the Democrats. And there seems to be gridlock when it comes to passing any kind of immigration reform. I'm going to get to where the real blame lies in a second. But I found this audio from Fox News Insider. It was actually from Fox and Friends over the weekend. And this has got to drive the Democrats crazy when they see something like this. So they had a dreamer on, a DACA recipient on their show. His name is Hilario Yanez, but he goes by Eli. And he spends this part of the show praising President Trump and going after the Democrats. What? How is that even possible? A dreamer who likes Trump? I thought they all hated Trump. No, apparently not. Let's listen to a little bit of what Eli said when it comes to what's going on with immigration and President Trump. Here it is.
Well, let me begin by first thanking Donald Trump for his leadership, his compassion, and also the courage to take on this issue. At the end of the day, here's a guy who wants to provide a pathway to citizenship for myself and really, make a difference in my life. So for that, I'm for that. I believe we need to have border security so this doesn't happen again. That's very important. And if a wall is necessary to add an extra layer for Border Patrol to do their job in a safe and responsible manner, then, I think it's necessary to fund it. The last couple of points is the diversity lottery. I think it's outdated. I think it's time for people who want to come to the United States for us to focus on skills so that they can contribute to the American economy right away. At the very end, the Republicans are in a unique position to really lead on this and really provide immigration reform that's long overdue.
You just spent a whole bunch of time praising Trump. How is this possible? A dreamer? And he likes Trump's immigration proposal.
Here's a dreamer. Here's a dreamer who knows what he's talking about. Yeah. As opposed to other dreamers, and they believe what they are told to believe.
I guess so. So he was asked his problem with what the Democrats are doing right now, and this is what he said.
The Democratic leadership, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, really have no clear message. We have been confused. I think at the end of the day, they've been using us as pawns. The second point that I want to bring is that they should have never shut down the government over DACA. We should have never held our American people and our military hostage. There's plenty of time on the table to fix this. March 5th is the deadline, and you can see Republicans already willing to do something about it as we speak. And the last point that I want to say is that, look, Democrats, they own all three branches of the government back in 2008 to 2011, and they still chose to do anything. So at this point, I'm quite frustrated with the Democratic leadership, what they've done.
So there's been a lot of the blame game. I had someone on my Facebook blame Republicans because they had all this time to push forward the DREAM Act when they owned Congress, even though they didn't own the presidency. But he makes a good point there that the Democrats owned both houses of Congress and the presidency when Obama first got elected, and they chose not to do anything about this either. So there's blame to go all around on this. To me, it seems like whatever happened in the past, it seems like a no-brainer now to just go with Trump's proposal. If they push forward this measure, what the White House wants, whether it's in the Senate or in the House, seems like a win for everyone. The Dreamers get their amnesty, basically, and we get border security.
Yeah, but you're forgetting one thing. The Democrats don't want to have Trump be able to claim the credit for it.
Exactly right. Well, they can never support the wall either. But here's the thing with all of this. Here's my cynical take with all of this. I don't think anyone has really wanted to solve this problem for a long time. And this is both Democrats and Republicans. I think a lot of the Republican leadership, frankly, before Trump has put him in a tough position because Trump is serious about border security. He's serious about stemming the flow of illegal immigration. Mm-hmm. He really is. Mm-hmm. So the Republicans are kind of have to go along now. It's one really good thing about Trump. But I think a lot of the Republican leadership for a long time has had no interest in stopping illegal immigration because they believe, and the Chamber of Commerce believes this as well, that illegal immigration is good for our economy and our country. They believe that. So they have no interest in stopping the flow of illegal immigrants. I don't think they did in the past until Trump came along, really. I mean, some did, of course, but I think a lot of them didn't. I think they paid lip service to it, but they didn't. And so it was actually Republicans and Democrats who have proposed immigration reform and the DREAM Act in the past. Both sides have supported it, which is basically would have given amnesty to a lot of illegal immigrants. And what happened when the Republicans got on board with that? There was a backlash. There was a huge backlash from the Republican base against it. So when the Republican base went against it, they were like, oh, man, because the reason why the Republican base went against it, it wasn't even so much that they were giving amnesty to illegal immigrants. It was because they didn't believe that there would be border security. What the Republicans wanted, the Republican base and conservatives, what they wanted is they wanted border security and immigration enforcement first, proof that it was put in place, proof that it was working and it happened, and then we can deal with the illegals that are here. But they would always want to do this comprehensively at once, and the Republican base stopped believing them. They didn't believe that they would fix the problem of stemming the flow of illegal immigrants. So they didn't do it. So they were always against it. And the Republicans, instead of just passing a bill, and part of this is Obama's fault and part of this is the Democrats' fault, what you would really have to do is pass a bill to fund the wall, fund border security, fund tougher enforcement, and have that put in place for a few years, make sure that worked. I think Rand Paul even passed something like this in the past, or proposed something like this in the past, and then deal with DACA and everything. But they never wanted to do that. So the Republicans are like, you know what? This is what I think was happening behind closed doors. I think they were like, you know what? Trump does his DACA thing. We'll cry about it to support our base, but we'll just let him take the heat for it. We'll let him give them amnesty, and then we don't have to do anything about it. We'll just allow illegal immigration continue. Our big business donors will love it. We'll just allow it to continue, and just let DACA do the work of giving amnesty. And both sides wanted amnesty because both sides want the votes. Mm-hmm. The Democrats want the votes, and the Republicans think that if they kind of let amnesty happen, they can get some of the Hispanic vote as well. So I think that's what was happening. I think that's why this was never solved, because I don't think there was any interest to really solve this problem. I think they were just going to let Obama have his amnesty DACA thing, let that work, and then move on. But then Trump got elected. And when President Trump got elected, and one of his main campaign proposals was the wall, you can no longer ignore this. You can't ignore it anymore. So this is the situation today. Trump is willing to give you a lot of what you want. No, forget what happened in the past. Let's look at what's happened, what's on the plate today. Trump, the president, and it looks like senators, the Republican senators in Congress, they are willing to give the Democrats a lot of what they want. All they want in return is funding for the wall and immigration enforcement. And the American people and a lot of the Republican base will go along with this because they believe that Trump will follow through on border security. But the Democrats are not going along with it. They're saying, no, we can't support this. No, the wall is impossible. Whatever reason. And they're trying to blame the president. And I'm not sure how much it's going to work because I've read pieces in the past from people who don't like Trump who are just telling the Democrats, let him have his wall. If it gets amnesty for the Dreamers, why are we going against it? Just give him funding for the wall so we can get this amnesty. It really is a compromise here that you would think the Democrats would jump on board with, but because of politics, party politics, they're not going to.
Well, the funny thing about it is the DACA has always been tied to the budget extensions that have been going on for the last 18 months or so?
Well, yeah, because the Democrats wanted leverage.
Now, yeah, right. But now they have a 2-year idea of where the budget's going to be going and what they're going to be spending. DACA is removed from that equation. So what's going to happen to DACA? Is it going to just kind of maybe fade away because there's no? Yeah, the Republicans, they passed the budget based on a promise that they would deal with this.
Yeah. I don't think it will fade away because I think Trump wants his funding for the wall. Mm-hmm. So this is the best way Trump sees he can get it. But maybe it will. I don't know. It depends if Congress can ever get together on this. Or if we elect more Republicans and then the Republicans will just pass it. Who knows? But yeah, what you said is true. The Democrats wanted to use the government spending as leverage to get DACA done, but it really didn't work. It really didn't make them look good. It made them look worse, and their base didn't support it.
Especially recently.
Yeah, with the government shutdown.
Yeah.
They thought they would make them look good with the government shutdown, but it really didn't. The American people are just not going to support shutting down the government for illegal immigrants. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We're going to end the show, of course, with things that made Yaffee laughy. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeart Radio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
Oh, it's that time of the show. We're getting close to the end of the show. Welcome back to Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Well, let's just do it. It's that time of the show once again. Yes, it is things that made Yaffee laughy. We got to end the show on a funny note, and I actually have a couple pretty good stories on that.
Good.
One from our website right here at 1025wfla.com, so you can check it out. I posted it on my Facebook as well. Send me a friend request on Facebook, and you can find it there. I will accept your friend request. So here's the headline. The Postal Service would like to remind you not to express mail tiger cubs.
Say what?
Well, this happened. Here it is, Tom Benson. Mexican federal police say they intercepted a package from someone that tried to express mail a tiger cub.
Oh, okay.
Not a stuffed animal.
Uh-huh.
Not, anything like that. A real live tiger cub.
I think I saw a video of a dog sniffing around a box, and that's how they found out the cub was inside.
Well, they posted a picture of the X-ray of the thing. It says nobody realizes. Yeah, you're right. Actually, nobody realized there was anything amiss until a sniffer dog looking for contraband alerted on the small blue container. It says when they opened the container to see what was inside, authorities were shocked to find a sedated tiger cub looking back at them.
Yeah.
I was wondering how the tiger survived or could just stay there, and they sedated it. The picture is amazing.
It was malnourished and dehydrated.
Yeah, the cub was mailed from western state of Jalisco to an address in the central state of Querétaro. The tiger was reportedly dehydrated and everything, as you say. Mexican officials say the tiger cub had its papers in order. Well, that's good.
He's a documented tiger, huh?
But the way it was being transported was considered mistreatment, and are currently looking for who was trying to transport it between the two cities. And my question was, what kind of if we did that in the U.S., I don't really know how it works in Mexico, but if we did that in the U.S., how many stamps would that take? When you go to the post office and you try to mail, how many stamps do I need to mail a tiger cub? I can't believe someone tried to do that. So
yeah, what are these air holes around the box for? What's that all about?
Oh man, that's funny. At least it was sedated. At least it was a cub. It wasn't like a giant tiger. All right, so here's another thing that made me laugh. Did you know that there is this trend on Twitter now? Hashtag rename Valentine's Day.
Oh boy.
Hashtag rename Valentine's Day.
To what?
Well, that's the thing. What you do is you post on Twitter and you come up with a different name for Valentine's Day.
In other words, make suggestions now.
Yeah, I found this on the Daily Wire, and they went through a bunch of tweets. We have to come up with some. I can't think of anything. Valentine's Day always stinks for me. Let's see. Laugh at me in there.
He's a lonely man. He needs a woman.
So here's one. Hashtag rename Valentine's Day. You better get your girl something if she says she doesn't want anything day.
Oh, yes.
Yep, that's a big one.
Yeah, don't get me anything. Are you kidding me? Surprise me or else.
Yeah, there you go. That's what we should name it.
Surprise me or else.
Surprise me or else. Here's another one. Hallmark presents Valentine's Day. Yeah. Hashtag rename Valentine's Day. Another person put Dollar Tree Day. I don't know if that's one you want to do. Someone said Discount Chocolate Eve Day. Another person said, weren't the same dozen roses cheaper yesterday day. I like that. Let's see. Someone said gas station flowers day.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Buy them on the way home as an afterthought, huh?
Yeah, and the best one, of course, that I saw was It's a Trap Day. Oh, man. I have to think of something. I liked yours. Surprise me or else day. I call it offensive to singles day. Yeah. Valentine's Day is very offensive to single people. I just wanted to point that out. I'm not a snowflake. I don't really care. All right. I thank you all for listening to the show. If you miss any of the show, make sure to catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. You can also like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. Follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R, or send me a friend request on Facebook as well. And we'll be on tomorrow night, 8 to 10 p.m., where I will be your voice of reason once again. And, well, I'll catch you guys then.